everybody. Happy Monday. So it's Monday. So did everybody have a nice warm day? My goodness, it was warm. I got overheated. I was out doing some errands and shopping and stuff, and oh my gosh, I got hot. I don't do very well with heat. So it was very, very warm. Hello. Oh, hey, Lynn, you need to go click the little link so that Facebook will let your name show into StreamYard. You need to go do that again. Hi, everybody. Well, it was probably cooler in the pool. I am finally cooled off now. I have 2 fans running. It's even hot in Wisconsin, huh, Shannon? Yeah. Yeah, it's been pretty warm today. So I had a good day though. I had a lot of fun. Got some stuff done. Yes, I can, Lynn. Thank you. Yes, Lynn, click the little button. Awesome. Yeah, it's hard. I can see people on my other, so like Facebook doesn't allow your names to come over to StreamYard unless you tell it it's okay. So if you haven't done that, make sure you go click on this link and the link up, go back to the video after it's over and just click the little link and it'll bring your name through to me, and then I can see. It's a little bit easier for me. Well, hi, Bridget. We have somebody from Australia here tonight. Hello. Yes, today's my day off, Shannon. Yeah, Sunday and Monday are my days off. So I like having a day off in the week because then you can do things you can't normally do, you know. So tonight we're gonna work on flanges and borders, and I have some little tricks that I do for these. The instructions are kind of different. They are in the quilting instructions are actually in the downloads for the quilting designs. So they're in I have them on a separate piece here. So if you've never done this, it looks a little daunting, but it's actually really easy. When are you going to do I am going to do the August Bench Buddies the first 2 Sundays in August. And those will be the last 2. So yeah, I'm not sure who asked that. Oh, Donna. Yeah, first 2 Sundays in August, whatever days those are. I can't remember. I haven't posted them yet because I haven't done them yet. That's one of the next things this next week. Hopefully I'll get them done. Let's see. August would be Sunday the 7th and Sunday the 14th would be the August Bench Buddies. So, yep. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're gonna quilt borders and flanges. So I'm going to show you how I do these. And you can see the little red ones, the little narrow ones, and then the bigger ones are the flanges on the pillow, okay? So, second here, I'm going to turn off the little banner. There we go. And I'm going to just flip the camera over here, and I'm going to show you my fabric. And I have done a couple of these already. I went ahead and sewed out a couple of these, and I'm going to show you how I normally do it. And I had to do it a little differently this time because I only had fat quarters to use for my borders, for my little borders. The flanges I had the width of fabric, but it depends on what I'm working with, what kind of fabric I'm working with, how I do these. But I'll show you how I normally do them. Okay, you get the mic flip over here. Okay, can you still hear me okay? Hopefully. All right. So, of course we need some when they tell you to cut these, just so you know, so like here's the instructions for the borders and the flanges. They tell you to cut them, you know, 1.5 by 16.5, 1.5 by 18.5, 2.5 by 18.5, and 2.5 by 22.5. I would tell you not to cut them to length, because if your pillow's a little bit too big, your flanges and your borders aren't going to fit. So we had this problem when we did the event, that we had some people have a little trouble, and I'm going to show you a way to work around that to get away from it. But I would tell you what I do when I cut these is I cut my borders the 1.5 inches by width of fabric normally. So normally, but all I had this time was a fat quarter. So I just cut 4, you know, my width of my fat quarter by 1.5 inches. Okay. So I'm just going to quilt these as they are. And then I'm going to cut them when I go to put my pillow together to the right size. That's normally the way I do borders. And I found that it works better for me to do that. Normally what I do then, like this was so I did a couple of these. See, I quilted a couple of them. Oops, upside down. There we go. So I quilted a couple of them. So these are too long, but I'm just going to trim them when I, second here, I had a comment that I couldn't see. Okay. So I'm just going to trim these when I go to put it together next week. And I like to do that because then I know that my pillow is going to be square and I don't have to take the chance of my borders not fitting. Now, if you have already cut them to the length they stated, you're still going to be okay. I'll show you how to work around that when we go to put it together next week. And it just depends on the seam allowance. So you can get it worked out if you have already cut them. Okay. But normally I cut my fabric the width of the border, which is 1.5, the little ones, and then the width of the fabric, so 45. But in this case, I had to cut 4 that were the width of my fat quarter, because that's what I had when I was cutting this out, because it was a second. And then when I cut out my flanges, see, I have those the width of the fabric. So these are 45 inches long. Okay. And I'm just going to trim these to the size that I need when I need them. So I just did one whole one. Okay. Normally when I do these, I like to sew 2 at a time. So I'm going to show you how to do 2 at a time with the narrow ones tonight. And then we'll just do one of the wider ones because of the hoop I'm using. If you have a wider hoop, you can do 2 of these as well. Okay. Because these are 2.5 inches. So they're, you know, you need to have at least like a 6 by 10 or an 8 by 12 to do 2 of these in a hoop. One of the gals asked me, "Hey Jan, can I use my old border hoop?" So that's the hoop I normally use. Brother and Baby Lock had these old border hoops, and I really like them. And they work really well, and they're very conservative on stabilizer. So this is my old border hoop, but the only disadvantage to this hoop, and it's 12 inches long, the disadvantage to this hoop is that it is very narrow. So it's only about 4 inches. So like, you know, in a 4x4 hoop, it's, you know, barely 4 inches wide. And so when I do, I can't do 2 of these in there. I can do 1. So when we do these tonight, I'm going to do 2 of the narrow ones to show you how I do 2 of them. And then I'm going to do just 1 of the bigger ones. Okay. So I've got this all hooped up. So all I did was I hooped this old hoop. So I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. They're kind of cool. And you can still get them. They're kind of pricey. They're like $300 or something like that. $399 maybe. I mean, they're expensive. But I've always loved this because it pops up like this. Yes, they do. Still sell it. I like it because it pops up like this. You push it down. Last time I checked, you know, a few months ago, I could still get it, but I haven't looked, you know, like super recently. And then they just pop up like that, and these little buttons pop in. And so this was the first original border hoops, and I've had one of these for, well, actually I have to tell you, these are actually Judy's hoops, because she had both of them, and all I had was the short one. And there's a short one that's like 7 inches long, and this one is 12 inches. So I use this one a lot. But see what I did is I put my piece of no-show mesh stabilizer in there, and then I have this little flap over here. And so when I go to take this out, I can use this half of my stabilizer for the second hooping, because then it's not so expensive. You know, it doesn't waste so much stabilizer. So that, but if you're doing these wider ones, you'll probably have to use like an 8x12 hoop. That's what I would do these probably in, is an 8x12. So these are my little advice things here when it comes to this. The other thing it tells you, and these are the instructions that come with the actual quilting. Okay. They tell you to put shape flex on the back of your fabric. I normally do not, because there's batting in there and it's plenty, you know, it's plenty fine. I don't usually take the time to put the shape flex on these borders. It's just one more thing I have to cut, and I don't really feel like you need them because there's not that much stitching on these. Okay. So mine are just the fabric. There's no shape flex on these. You can, if you want to, put shape flex on. You know, I do on these, like on the background of the blocks, because, you know, the blocks are, have a lot more stitching on them. So I usually do, but with these borders and the flanges, I normally don't. Okay. So this one is the blue one of the flanges, and this one looks real nice, and there's no shape flex in this. Okay. So that's one of the things that it tells you to do, but you don't have to. Okay. I also choose the longest hoop that I can. I kind of look at the length of my borders or whatever I'm doing, and like in this case, the 12-inch one was very, the 12-inch one was very a good size, because I could just hoop it a couple of times, you know. And then the long one that I do for the whole piece, you hoop it 4 times. Okay. So like these that are the width of my fat quarter right here, like 22.5 or whatever they are. These that we're just going to have to hoop twice because it's about 12 inches. So, you know, I just kind of do the math and pick one that's about, you know, it wouldn't be any better. I still have to hoop it twice if I use a 9x14. So I just did the 8x12 because it's a little easier to handle. Okay. So I'm going to pick the 12-inch designs this time. Let's see what I did. Oh yeah. Okay. So we're going to do, so when I do these, I normally do 2 borders and 2 flanges at a time. So if I were going to do my 2 flanges, which were the wider ones, if I was going to do those, I would then use my 8x12 hoop to do that. But I just did one because I was using this hooplet yesterday, just because it's handy. And so we'll just do one tonight because I already did one. And I did 2 of my borders last night in the red. Okay. All right. And the other thing that it tells you to do in these instructions, you know, these are your border instructions. It also tells you to cut all the batting. Again, I don't cut the batting. You have to trim it anyway. I just lay it on the hoop and trim it in the hoop because it's so much faster than cutting all that batting. Okay. So let me show you how to do this. We're going to do the red borders first. Second here, I got to get these off my lap so I won't drop them. And I did get all my blocks done. So here's my blocks. I'll show you my blocks. Here's my flower and my cherries and my sweet land of liberty. So I got all the blocks done. Here's the flag. These are all ready to put together next week. And then here's my pie and my watermelon and the little piece block that we did in class last week. And then my cake. So these are all ready to be put together next week. Okay. So I wanted to show you those, that I actually did get them done. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to get, sorry, I'm a little disorganized tonight. I got awfully warm this afternoon and it takes me a while to get cooled off. We're going to go ahead and pick our design. And so it told us which design to use here for the borders, which are the little red ones, the narrower red ones. It said to use Patriotic 2, the 1-inch design. So I'm going to go on my stick here, and I'm going to find my Patriotic 2. Let's see, borders. It's borders Patriotic 2. I have to find that. It's up here at the top here. Patriotic 2, and then it's a 1 inch, so it's going to finish 1 inch border. So I'm going to do the 1 inch by block. I'm going to do the 1 inch by, I'm picking the 12 inch one because that's the size hoop I have. Okay. So here's the one. Whoops. Did I get it? Okay. So I'm going to set that. Now I want to be able to do 2 of these in the same hoop. So what I'm going to do is up here under edit, I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm just going to hit this little button that looks like 2 squares, and it's going to duplicate it on my screen. So here's 2 of them now. Okay. Now we need to move them a little ways apart, and it's probably going to get mad. So I'm going to take this hoop out of the machine for a second because this hoop is really narrow and I locked it down, so it'll be mad. All right. So I'm going to move these a little way, just a little ways apart, so that there's a little room in the in between. Okay. But we can't get it too wide because otherwise it won't fit in this little narrow hoop. If you have more room, it's a lot easier. And you could do like all 4 of these in an 8 by, I think you could do all 4 of them in an 8 by 12 hoop if you wanted to do that. And you could just do them all 4. You would just duplicate it a couple more times and put them in. In my case, I'm just going to do 2. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK. So I got my duplicate in there. I want to make sure that they are evenly spaced. So just a second here. I'm going to do a couple little things on the machine that you may not have done before. Down here at the bottom, there's this little button that looks like a square, a circle, and a triangle. If I touch that, it allows me to select everything on the screen. So see how they're both pink now? Then what I can do is I can hit this little button down here that looks like a polka dot, and it's going to center them in the hoop together. And I'm just going to check. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to do this one more time. Let's make sure. Oops. I think they were all lined up. Okay. So let's make sure that they're aligned. Okay. It looks like they are. Okay. Because there's an alignment thing right here also that'll allow it to make sure that they're the same distance this way. But I think they already were. So that looks pretty good because I did center them and they look pretty good. So now I've got a little space in between. We just need a little space. And in fact, I could make them just a little bit further apart. So I think I might do that. There we go. I'm going to move it one more time and just move it over a little bit more. I know I've got about 3.9 inches of space in that hoop is all I have. And I have to keep them, you know, within that 3.9 inches. Okay. Yes, you can, Lynn. You don't even need to use the largest hoop. I think you could just do your 8 by 12. So yes, you would just duplicate it 3 times. So you'd have 4 in there and then just move them apart. So you got a little space in there. And then, yeah, I think they'd even fit in your 8 by 12. It'd be easier to deal with the 8 by 12. Okay. So then I'm going to select this again. I'm going to select all of them again. And I'm just going to, center it again. Just make sure they're centered. Okay. So I think I'm okay because I'm about 3.8 up here. So I always have to watch this number right here to make sure they're not too far apart. Okay. So hopefully that explains it to everybody what I did, because I selected them both. You don't do that in here. Whoever asked that, Jan, no, you do that in the, they're going to be the same no matter what you do. So I just change them the way I want them when I sew them on, because you can flip them either way. Okay. So no, I'm not going to flip it. I'm not going to flip it. Okay. So I've got 2 of them. They'll fit in this little hoop, and I'm going to hit embroidery. Now, this is where not all of the machines have this, but a lot of them do now, is if I hit layout or edit up here, the Dream Machines and the Destinies don't have this, but I love this little, let's see, maybe they do now. They might actually have it with that second upgrade. This little button right here, under layout, this is the color sort button. And the one thing that they have done about these borders and stuff, they're all the same. Even if you have to do two different ones, they've made the colors all the same in them. So they come up in the machine the same. And if I click that button, it's going to color sort this. If I hit layout. So now it's going to do all the first steps together, all the second steps together, all the third steps together, and so on. Okay. That way I can just do multiples at the same time. And like Lynn wants to do all four of hers in a bigger hoop, she can do the same thing. If she color sorts it, it would do all of the placement lines, all the tack down lines, and so on. And at the same time, so you can just do the same step over and over, all the way down to the bottom. Okay. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. I just duplicated this. The other way you could have done it, is you could have hit the add button and brought a second one in. But in the editing screen, we have that duplicate button, which is nice. Okay. All right. So I think I'm going to color sort again because I went back and it took the color sort away. All right. So now we're ready to sew. And these are now I know this looks kind of scary. I remember the first time I did these, I'm like, oh, so I found a couple little ways that are much easier to do this. Now I am using, I used a different color on this one than I did my first one because I had a browner piece of fabric. So I'm using my 1141 shredded wheat for this one instead of white. You could use white if you wanted to. I didn't want it to be quite so stark as the white. So I made mine this kind of tannish color. And then on the first one, though, in the kit I had, it was a little bit more of a taupey color. So I used my $3.99 warm gray the first time. It just depended. My fabric was a different color this time. Okay, so I got two of those done. And these really go quick. I only have to hoop it 2 times. Okay, so these designs, all of these quilting designs have, and we've used these quilting designs before, they're the same, always in the same order. So the first step is going to be the placement line for the batting. So if you give me a second here, I'm going to find a piece of batting here. And I just have chunks of batting. I didn't cut my batting, and you can cut it if you want to, but it just seems like a lot of work to me to cut it. So it's going to do the two placement lines for the two borders. I'm going to move my borders out of the way so I don't lose them. And what usually scares people about these is the next step. When you have to put the next section on. And so it looks really hard, but it's so easy. And I have a little trick for you too. I really like doing these. These are really, really fun. And the first time I did it, I cut all the batting and I did just exactly what it said, and I used tape and I figured out some much faster ways to do these to make them go really quick. Because I got, I can sit and make borders, and sometimes I do all 4 of them in the same hooping. So, oh, my hoop, this is one of the old border hoops, Connie. It's one of the old Brother Baby Lock border hoops, and it's really narrow, but it's 12 inches long, and I've always loved it because it works really great for this kind of thing. It's not very wide. That's the only disadvantage, is that it's kind of narrow. Because the machines, back then, this came out with the Quattro. No, it came out before that. I think it came out with the 4000D. So, the hoops weren't as long then. So I put my batting down. And then the second step is going to be the place or the tack down line for our batting. Trying to make sure I don't have, and I am going to just kind of hold my chunk of batting on here. There we go. My stabilizer was all wonky under there. I can still get these old hoops, Connie. They are a little on the pricey side. I think they're like $300 or $400. but they are cool because they pop up and it's really easy to get things in and out of them. And I use this when I do the border function on the luminaire, like when I quilt borders on the luminaire. I love this little border hoop, but I have to be careful to do narrow borders because it is very narrow. I like this one better than the new magnetic one. It's just, but it's not very big. It's just kind of narrow. So, all right, so here's the second one. It's going to do my second one since we're doing 2 of these at a time. Yeah, some of the hoops are really expensive. I mean, you know, the new magnetic border hoop is like $500. Something like that. It's expensive. I also do this with regular hoops. Honestly, a lot of the times if I'm doing all of these at the same time, I do I use the 8x12 or the 9.5x14, and then I could do all 4 of these borders at the same time. But I wanted to. Somebody asked me, "Oh, are you going to use your border hoop?" So I thought, I'll just use it, and I can only do 2 at a time in this case. So I sold a couple of these out yesterday. But a lot of people have these. So if you've had an older machine, you might actually have one of these that you bought in an upgrade and you've never used it. So this is a reason you could use it. I really do actually like it. So, all right. So now, of course, we did our tack down. So now we're going to trim our, we're going to trim our batting close to the stitches. So same order that we did the blocks in. And again, these are the block by block designs, not the clear blue tile designs. So I'm going to have to pull this out so I can get to it. So these are fun. All right, so I got my chunk of batting. I'm just going to throw it over here. It is a little bit hard to trim down here because you can see that there's kind of this little knobby thing that sticks up, and it's a little hard to get your hand in here, but if you slide it around, it's not too bad. So I'm just going to trim close to the stitches. So I stopped after the first one. I stopped cutting the batting because you still have to trim it, whether you cut it like they had you cut it like, I don't know, an inch or so bigger than what you were doing. And I'm like, well, then I still have to trim it. So I just use chunks. I have lots of scraps, and I think it actually wastes less than cutting, you know, all those little pieces. And I don't like to cut. I'm not a very good cutter, and I don't enjoy it very much. I did cut a pillow out yesterday. I cut out the Halloween pillow. So I got most of that done. Okay, so here's my batting trimmed. So the third step in the design is no, wait a minute here. 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the third step in the design is going to be the placement line for the fabric. So this one is the one that we really need to pay attention to. So we do have to, obviously we have to do this one because we need to get these borders in here so that they're straight, right? So it's going to go around the outside edge here. I think I might have one of these on top of another one, so I may, no, maybe not. Might be okay. Second, my phone keeps going off here. All right. So it's going to do the placement line for the fabric. Yeah, all hoops are kind of expensive. So, I mean, I have a lot of hoops, and as you need them, you buy them. This was one that was like in an upgrade years ago for either the Quattro, it might have been the Quattro upgrade. And then they had the shorter one, I think maybe in the 4000D, because I have that one because I had a 4000D. Okay, so I've got my placement lines, and I'm just using my shredded wheat, my 1141, I think. Okay, so this is where we need to get this fabric in here, right? So I'm going to use my in the instructions, it tells you to tape it down and to take like little rolls of tape and put little tape up here and tape up here and then stick it down to the tape. And I was doing that, and I was like, I had tape all over the place. I'm like, no. So I got my little Soline glue stick out. This works great. So I'm just going to take my Soline glue stick, and I'm going to go across the top of each one of these. Okay, because we need to have the top of the fabric there first. So I'm going to do that first. And I'm going to stick this down about, a quarter to a half an inch above the batting where I trimmed it off up here. Right between the lines. So I'm just going to stick this down right between the lines and, leave a quarter of an inch to a half an inch. I mean, you got, especially, I wouldn't go more than about a quarter of an inch if you did cut your borders to the actual size, because then you might be a little short on fabric. So I usually use about a quarter to 3/8 of an inch or so. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm just going to find my lines, and I'm going to stick this on that glue at the top and just stick it down to the stabilizer. Okay, like that. Then I'm going to flip these back, and it tells you then to tape it along the sides. And I'm like, or no, I think they had you taping with the little tape rolls at the top and at the bottom and just kind of pulling it. And then you had all this tape and all these little rolls of tape. And I was like, this is not working for me. So I just take my glue stick and I go right down through the placement line there. And then you go down the other side. Okay. Then I'm going to take my fabric, line it up in those little lines, and it's going to line up perfectly. And then I'm just going to stick it down to the hoop. And this worked really slick, and then I didn't have to use tape. I didn't like the little tape thing because things wanted to kind of slide on me. The tape didn't stick real well, but this sticks really well. So see, I'm just kind of taking my finger along. This size, somebody asked me what size it is, Donna. It is 4 by 12. It's kind of an odd size. It's very narrow. But they made it as a border hoop because they have a border function. There was a border function, and this machine has it, and a lot of the older ones have it. That they made this for that border function. That's in the machine, and the border function is actually kind of fun because you just lay your fabric on after the batting, then cut in the strips after all sewn. I don't understand that question. Could you just lay your fabric on after the batting, then cut in strips after all sewn? I don't quite understand that, but we need to have. These need to be long enough, Nancy. So I don't quite understand that question. Can you elaborate a little bit more? So now I'm going to go ahead and put the glue back down on the other one here. Oops. Second, I ran out of glue. Okay. And I'm just running it along. I like the little Soline one because it's narrower, and it lays right down between the batting and that placement line. And I'm just going to lay it down in between my lines, stick it down to the stabilizer. Okay. And I'm pretty confident that it's not going to go anywhere. So like I said, the other, in the instructions, it had you put like a little roll of tape. And then, no, it's better to cut them, not cut the strips. No, I would cut the strips because of the way that the design works. I think it would be much harder, I think, to do it the other way. I would just cut the strips. A lot more cutting. If you want to cut more, I mean, it's going to take you more time to cut them the other way. So I would just cut the strips. Okay. So now I got them ready to go. And also, Nancy, the way this works for the next hooping, you need to have these in strips, the way they have it done. So now I'm going to put my foot down. Oops. And I'm going to do step number 4, which is always going to be the tack down line for the fabric. So it's just going to tack it down to my stabilizer. It's going to do that. And so we only have to hoop this a couple of times. to do this whole strip because we're gonna connect together the next hooping, and I'll show you. You use the same design, but then you connect it together and you can't really tell. Like if you can see on the back of this one where the connection is for the next hooping, but you know, on the front, it looks seamless. Okay, so there's my first tacking lines, and then it's going to do the second ones. I think I got this one a little crooked. Try to keep them as straight as you can. I'm going to go down this side. And then it's going to jump over and do the other side. So Nancy, because the way these are done with the multiple hoopings, if you had a piece of fabric in here, it would be much harder. So I don't think I could get them straight. Okay, so there is my tack down line. So then, well, what the last step is always the quilting. So now we're going to quilt both of these. And I just left the same color in for all the steps. So now it's going to do the little, and it's going to do a little Sweet Land of Liberty on both sides. And then we'll do the second hooping, and then those will be done. Since these are the shorter, and like I said, these are still too long. I have to trim them off. But I always just, I normally like to do, you know, a full 45 inches. So, but these were just a fat quarter. I didn't have quite enough fabric, so. So it's doing the, and you can see, like I said, I don't have the shape flex in there. If you want to put it in, you can. I just have never, I guess I've always done the borders without the shape flex. Normally when I do quilting with batting in there and stuff, I don't use shape flex except when I have a lot of stitches. Like on these blocks, you know, we did these blocks and there's a lot more stitches in those than there is in this. So, and it just makes it stiffer and harder to put together. So I just don't usually put it on for the borders on the flanges. And the flanges especially, I don't want them to be too, you know, it's not actually, the pillow's not actually in there. It's sort of like a loose piece of fabric. And if you put even more stabilizer in there, it's stiffer and it doesn't lay nice. So I thought they looked better without it. But you can put it in if you'd like. All right. So we're doing Sweet Land of Liberty. And I think what Jan was asking was about how I'll show you the pillow at the end, Jan, how I did the borders. So sometimes I do them one way and sometimes I do them another way. So I'll show you what I did on this one. And we'll talk about it next week too when we put it together. But it's so cool how this works out because it appears seamless, but there is actually a break, you know, where these are. So like here is the break where the two pieces of batting come together. But if you're careful when you put it in, you can't even see it. Okay. All right. So that is done sewing now. Okay. So now we're done with that hooping. So the next step we're going to do is we got to take these out. And this old hoop has these little buttons here. So if you push these, it snaps up. There's a little button on each end. I'm just going to pull this out. And then what I do, and you can take it over to your rotary mat if you don't want to, but I usually just use scissors. So the next thing, we need to take the stabilizer out. So I just trim with my regular scissors up. Don't trim the tail off. Leave the tails on. Okay, leaves the tails. We need those. I'm just going to trim up along the edges here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I just kind of trim, and don't trim any of your fabric off. We need all that width. So I'm just going to trim up here. Trim it out of the stabilizer. I'm usually not too neat about this. Sometimes when I get ready to put them together, I kind of neaten them up a little bit with the rotary cutter, but I'm usually just wanting to get these done when I'm embroidering. So we'll get them trimmed out here. And I'm not real good with a rotary cutter, so I have a tendency to do scissors for this kind of stuff. So then what we're going to do when we get down here at the bottom, we want to flip these tails. We don't cut your tails off, okay? So we want to flip these tails back, and I want to trim the stabilizer out where that batting is and get as close to the stitching as I can so that we have a nice seam when we go to put these together. So I'm just going to make sure I trim it right up there. Okay, and then we're going to trim between here too. So whatever works for you. If you want to use your rotary cutter, use your rotary cutter. I just am not super good with one, so I don't usually. I usually just sit here and trim them out with my scissors. You know, we used to do everything with scissors, and when we got rotary cutters, now no one uses the scissors. I love these scissors. These are nice ones, and they're pretty too. Got my American flag on them. Thought these were very good to be using for this project. Okay, so then we're going to do the second hooping. So the first thing I got to do, see that the reason I like this hoop so much, see, I can take the same piece of stabilizer that I was using, and I'm just going to trim off this little piece off the side here. And then this is just the right width to go back in my hoop again, because this hoop is narrow and it just lays right in there again. So I can get two hoopings out of one piece of stabilizer. So I like to be economical, you know. All right. All right. So I got that back in there. Okay. We're going to put this back in the machine. And it's the same design that we just used. We're just going to do it again. But then this is how it gets put together. I'm going to go ahead and flip this off so I won't get this caught too. Okay. So now I've got this all rehooped again. And here's my two pieces. Okay. And we've got the quilting done. And then here's the little tail that's not quilted yet. So we're going to do step number one again. Step number one is going to be the placement line for the batting again. So we're going to start out just like we did before. I'm going to get my batting. I always have to be careful that I don't drop these scissors on my toe because they're really sharp. So I'll put them back in the drawer. All right, so there's our first placement line. And then we'll do the second one. I thought these were really cool. I just love the little Sweet Land of Liberty. And I think the No Place Like Home ones were really cute too. They do some cute borders on stuff. So, and then the next one was really neat because it has like all the elements again, you know, how like some of our block quilting did. You know, this one has all the little elements of the design. And then I just thought that was so cool. Okay, so we're getting our placement lines. Okay, and then we're going to lay our batting down again. Okay, lay our batting down again over the placement lines. And then we're going to sew out step number two, which is always the tack down line for the batting. I liked it that they had everything the same, and they even use the same, like they come up in the same colors on the machine. So when you, it's like everything's really, you know, it's very, you know, from one design to another, it's similar. So. All right. So there's the first one. It's going to go around a couple times. So is everybody understanding the borders a little bit? Is it a little less scary? I had a couple people say, oh, I'm so scared to try to do these because it does look a little scary, the instructions, But remember, the instructions for the borders are actually in the download of the border designs, not in the book. Okay, where the rest of the stuff is. Consistency is important. Thank you, Connie. I can't think of any words tonight. I got too hot this afternoon. Well, I'll tell you, I don't do very well with heat, and it was hot. I get in and out of that hot car, and I think my brain goes dead. So yeah, so make sure you print out those instructions for your quilting designs, because this gives the instructions about the quilting, and it shows you the steps for that. I just don't use the tape anymore. So they always had you take the tape, you know, and roll it up like this and do the little thing like this and put it at the top and the bottom. But I was having trouble because my tape wasn't sticking to my stabilizer, and then it would pop off and things would move. So I like the glue because then it stays stuck down all the way around, and then my borders are my first borders were kind of crooked because they were moving on me, and with the glue it doesn't move. Okay. So then of course we're going to do our trimming of our batting. So we're going to trim our batting close to the stitches. Looks like I need some new scissors again. I go through these scissors so fast. It's cheaper just to buy new ones than it is to have them, try to get them sharpened. By the time you get them shipped to someplace, get them sharpened and get them sent back, it costs as much as a new pair of scissors. So I usually just buy new scissors. And these have been dropped several times. So these are I love these scissors, but they're a little dainty. So try not to drop your Ginger double curved scissors. I dropped mine too many times, and then they start getting dull because I think the blades get off a little bit. All right, this is a hard hoop to switch in the machine, so I'm sorry if you can't see me trimming. It's kind of an odd shape, and it's got those big things on the ends, so it's hard to switch it. But I do love using this. And so normally when I do borders, if I do a couple at a time. I sometimes think that's enough for me to deal with. I don't do like all of them at once. I usually do a couple at a time. I think I did all of them for the one of the pillows that I made a sample of just because I needed to get them done, but I prefer to do like 2 at a time. A little more relaxing. Okay, so there's my trimmed batting. So then the next step, third step's always the fabric placement line. So it's very important that we put this on. This is the one I always like to forget, and very important that this one's on because we need this to get these ends straight. Because of course now we really need to get it straight, right? Because we want to get these all, so our border is all beautiful and straight. You can't see where it starts and stops. So it's going around the outside edges. Can't see people's comments too well. Oh, there we go. Oh, hi, Jackie. I had more people come in. All right, so we're getting our placement lines. So now this method's going to be a little bit different because we want to get these lined up so that they appear seamless, right? So I'm going to pull this out so I can get to it. And I noticed that my trimming wasn't the greatest down here. Let's see if I can get it turned around. There we go. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit closer. You want to be pretty close down here at the top here so that the next piece will lay in there nice. Okay. So I'm going to take one of my borders and I'm going to flip the tail back. This is the tail, you know, that's not quilted. I'm going to flip it back so I can see where the edge of that batting is. And I'm going to take my fabric glue stick and I'm going to put my glue across the top like I did before. But this time I'm going to push this up there so that the batting comes right up to the edge of the next piece of batting. And I've got the tail flipped back so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to press that down. Okay. And I do these one at a time. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to run it down the sides just like I did before. Okay. And this time it will not be full size because it's going to cut off a little bit because these are not that long. And like when you're doing these, if you're doing the full 45 inches, you'll have to do this 4 times. And like the last hooping will be small. So we'll do some of the hoopings on the next one too. Okay. So see how it ended up down here. Okay. So this is now stuck in here. Now the one thing I do tape is I always tape over the end of this, because if you don't tape over the end of this, your foot will catch that and it'll pull it out of the hoop. So I always put the piece of tape over the end to hold it together. And you can put it all the way over the whole thing if you want to. I usually do 2 pieces. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with this one. I got to find my other border. I'm going to flip this back so I can see exactly where the end of my batting is. I'm going to take my fabric glue stick and I'm going to lay this right up to the edge of the batting. I'm lining up the fabric with the placement lines right here. Okay. Then I'm going to take my glue stick again and I'm just going to run down the sides. And then I'll take the fabric and lay it in between those lines. When I figured out the glue stick, everything stays put now. Because boy, did I have trouble with things moving around on me. Okay, so I'm just going to get those in those lines. Okay. I'm going to go get my tape for the other end here. So we'll tape this one across too, so that it won't catch. Now, normally when I do these, I actually just let it sew off the end. Because you wouldn't have to, you could stop it when it gets off the end, but I usually just let it sew because sometimes I'm doing other stuff and I'm not really paying attention and I just let it sew off the end. But that's what I'll probably do tonight. So the next step, of course, is always going to be the tack down lines. So it's going to tack down our fabric. And of course, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom because that's how long the design is. There's no fabric down there, but that's okay. And then it's going to do the other side. And then I'll just trim it off where the stitching ends. Okay, so we got that. There we go. This one I must have gotten a little crooked. Well, or I think I bumped my arm, so everything might be, hopefully it's not too wonky. Yeah, it's okay. You can tell if you're doing pretty well because it's going to start right where you stopped at the top. So you can kind of tell if you did okay getting it lined up. I'm just a little off on the one on the left, but it's still going to be fine. Not that off. Every now and then I'll bump something like when I'm doing this so like this one's a little bit off, but it's okay. It'll be fine. Yeah. So I'm not that off. All right. So then, of course, the last step is going to be the quilting. So make sure everything's glued down up there well. Yep. And then we're ready to quilt. So that was pretty easy, wasn't it? Putting them together, putting the 2 halves together, and then they appear seamless. You know, they're not seamless, but they appear seamless. And you can, like I said, you can stop it when you get down to the bottom here. But lots of times I'm doing something else and I just let it sew off the bottom. Because then I don't have to sit there and watch it. And the flange, we'll do a couple of hoopings on the flange too. This one I think had 3 full hoopings and then a partial one. So we'll do a couple on this one too. It's done the same way. And this one is going to be, whoops, there it goes. It's getting off the end. So what I usually do is I pick the hoop. I kind of do math, I know how long my pieces are. So I try to do, the hoop size. That's, so I only have to hoop it maybe a couple of times or 3 times or something. 8 by 12 is a good size just because it's easier to handle. So I often have these 12-inch ones that I use. And you could use the bigger one if you wanted to, but that's usually the one I use is the 8 by 12. Or in this case, it's 4 by 12. These work really good with the 12-inch because you only had to hoop it twice, for these. I had a fat quarter, so I only had to hoop it twice. And then, like, if I would have done these longer flanges, a bit wider flanges, I would have just hooped that 4 times to do the whole, the whole strap for both of these. If I would have had longer fabric, but I just didn't have longer fabric, so. Depends on what you have. So I was using up my scraps and I had a fat quarter of this. So, all right. So did everybody cut their borders to the size it said in the book, or did you not cut your borders? Or maybe people haven't cut their borders yet. Okay, so I'm done with that. And then we'll do the same thing we did before. Just take it out, and if we needed to do it again, we'd be down here and we'd flip the tail end up, and that's the way the other border is going to be. So we'll work on that. I'm not going to trim these out right now. We'll go on to the other flange so you can see that one. So I did the same exact thing, and then I'll just take out the tape down here. Okay, I'll just pull the tape out, and then I'd cut these off. And then when I get ready to put this together on next week, I'll show you how I'll just trim these to the size I need. Yes, this is the Kimberbell paper tape. Yes, it's on our website. Whoever asked that, Nancy. Yes, it's on our website, and it's in the. There should be some in the store too. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the flange, and this one is going to be done with the blue. And I got to find a piece of stabilizer here. And this one is the full length. So this one is my full width of my fabric. I had a yard of fabric. So this one I hooped it 4 times. So I won't do all the hoopings, but let's do a couple of hoopings so you can see that technique again. So when we start, of course, we start the design. I'm gonna go ahead and put my stabilizer back in here. Maybe it cooperates with me. And then this one I did with my lighter blue thread, and instead of white, I used the lighter blue because it wasn't quite as stark on that blue fabric. You can use any color you want to quilt. And I'm just going to put that in. And I just got bobbin thread, by the way, in the bobbin. So just like we did all the other ones. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to my blue. And I think this one was Paris Blue 0028 for the flange. Yeah, this paper tape works really great. And it isn't super sticky. I don't like to sew through it very well because it's a little hard to get out then, but I can get it out. But it works really well. Okay, so now we're going to go get the other design. So the other design, it says in the book which one they used. So let's go over and get our design here. And I'm just going to do one this time because I only need one because I already did the other one. So I'm going to go back to embroidery, and then this one was also Patriotic 2, but it's a 2-inch design instead. So I'm going to go down here and find my design on my stick. Maybe borders Patriotic 2. There it is. And then these are going to be again the block by blocks, because they have the batting lines in them. And then the 2-inch ones. So they're going to be 2. And then I'm, again, still using my 12-inch hoop. So I'm going to do 2 by 12. And see, I could have done this like in my 16-inch hoop. That's okay. That is fine, Nancy. If you did, just do 2 of them at a time, or you could do all 4. A couple of them need to be done. Like if you already cut them, that's fine. I'll tell you how to deal with that if you have a problem next week. It'll be fine. So I normally they've been telling everybody to cut them, and I don't usually cut borders because I find that sometimes, if I'm not careful sewing, my borders were a little shortish, but I figured out a way to take care of that. So you should be fine. All right. So here's my design. It was 2 by 12. Yeah, 2 by 12. And then I'm going to do set. So we're just going to do one. I'm going to leave it in the center. So that's plenty narrow enough for my little hoop here. Okay. And again, same exact order. The first step is always going to be my placement line for my batting. So we'll do that first. Put my chunk of batting here. I put my blue thread in. I kind of like the blue on this. This blue flange was a little different than my original one. This one's a little bit brighter. So I didn't have any more of that fabric, so I had to punt with what I had here. So, and I had to go out and get polka dots today for the Halloween pillow because the black and white polka dots. Didn't have enough. All right, so there's our placement line for our batting. Next step, of course, we're going to put our chunk of batting in here, and then we're going to tack this down. Same steps we've been doing before. I'm not being very careful with my batting, so don't mind me. Oops, I'm going to sew my stabilizer in here. I have a little trouble with my stabilizer wanting to get caught. There we go. So it goes around it twice. But this goes pretty quick. And even though I did them in smaller chunks, you can do, if you want to, just put all 4 of them in there at the same time and do them all. Or if you have them cut already, I would tell you not to do all 4 of them at the same time. Do the 2 that are the same length and the 2 that are the same length, because then it's easier for the hoopings. Or you could do the first couple of hoopings all together and then do the last one, just the longer ones. So, all right. So now we're going to trim our batting again. So this is going to be our flange. Okay. Pull this back so you can see what I'm doing here. And I think doing the border, doing all the borders like this without cutting them, I think it goes a little faster. But like when we got our kits, when we did the event, we did the No Place Like Home event, all of the kits had cut borders. And so I was like, oh boy, and we had some people that had some borders that were a little short. And so I figured out a way that we can get around that, and I'll explain that next week. But when you go to put it together, the people that had short borders, because really the borders, when you quilt them, they actually do shrink up just a little bit. Second here, I got to get there we go. This hoop's a little tight, so. All right, so now the next step is going to be step number 3 is always the placement line for the fabric. So I got to get my long strip. So I got my 45-inch strip this time. And I didn't even cut off the selvage edges. They're still on the end. I got to get my tape out because we're going to tape this down. It was these wider borders that I had trouble with the tape, because they wanted to scoop in the middle. They wanted to kind of do this. And so I was having a lot of problems keeping them even. So that's when I decided that I was going to glue them down. Okay, so now we're going to take our fabric. And now this one I am going to pull it up just a little bit because I got a selvage on it. So just take our glue along the top there. And I'm going to pull this one up because see there's a little bit of a selvage edge on here. I'm going to pull this one up just a little bit further just so I don't have any selvage in the edge of it. So I'm just going to pull it up just a little bit. So that one is about a ½ inch. And I'm going to make sure I got it kind of straight here. Looks like I did. Okay. I'll pull this back and then I'm going to put my glue down all the way to the bottom. So I'm just going to go down to between the batting and the placement line with the glue. I just love these Soline glue sticks. They work really great for this. And then I'm going to lay this down and stick it down to the hoop. All the way down. Second here, let me see if I can slide it in under the foot again. Just make sure you get it as straight as you can. And of course, you know, with me, it might be not cut straight either. Okay. There we go. So I got it glued down to the stabilizer. Okay. I'm going to put this back in the machine. And then the fourth step, of course, is going to be the tack down line for the fabric. So we'll do that next. And I've got my tail down here. Here's the tail at the bottom. There we go. Okay. Place the tack down line on. I don't think I cut this one very straight. I have trouble cutting. I'm surprised that my stuff turns out as good as it does because I always have had a lot of trouble cutting things. I'm going to hold this a little bit because it scooted just a little bit. Okay, so now after we got them tacked down, then the next step is going to be the quilting. So here's the quilting. Now this one's weird because it kind of starts in the center and works back. It's strange. It does appear seamless, but I thought it was odd that it started kind of in the middle of the strip and then worked back and then came over this way. So it was different. And this one is so cute because it has all the little swirls and then it has like the little elements from here's the little cherries and the little watermelon. There's the little flower in the pot and pie. I really like this one. This was like one of the the block designs that we did too. And I like the blue. What do you think? You like the light blue? You can see it, but it's not like as stark. So this one was fun. And these do take a few minutes to stitch out because they have quite a lot of stitches in them. And it's going to do another swirl here at the top. Is everybody doing okay? Does everybody understand? These are fun to do. I actually find this very relaxing sitting here quilting these little strips and stuff. They turn out so cute. Oh, it even has the little pinwheel. It's doing the little pinwheel right now. Okay, so then it stops there, and then it's going to go down and do the bottom half. So it like stops in the middle. Because the pattern's about half the strip, like 6 inches long or so. Yep, soon do another pinwheel. I forgot the pinwheels were in here too. And the stars. Yeah, they're cute. And then we'll cut these too to the size of the pillow when we go to put it together. And if you're very sure that you're going to be, when you sew yours together, it's going to be the exact same right size, then you can cut them in advance. Jan doesn't always have that luck, so that's why I like to do them this way. And if you've already started sewing it together by any chance, what my trick is, and we'll talk about it more next week, is I actually take a full 1/4 inch seam. Don't do scant ones. Take full 1/4 inch seams when you're sewing your blocks together, because then if your borders are already cut, you have much more chance of them fitting fine if you're not taking scant 1/4 inch seams. So take full 1/4 inch seams. All right, so there's our first hooping. All right, so we're going to do another hooping, and it's the same way. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to flip this up, push the little buttons down here. Okay, and I'm going to pull this out, and then we're going to trim. I'm going to get my scissors again. I always stick them back in the drawer so I won't drop them. They're kind of heavy. These are those big gingers. I've had these for years. I love these scissors. And we're just going to trim this up here along the edge of the strip. And again, you can take your rotary cutter if you want. I just like to do it this way. Then I don't have to get up. I guess I'm lazy. Then I'm going to flip the tail up, and be careful, don't cut your tails, okay? I'm going to flip my tail up and cut across the bottom of that batting right here. Don't cut in your fabric. Okay. Get my tail out of the way so I won't cut into it. It's a little hard to do this on camera, so you've seen me cut before. I think you know what to do. All right, I'm gonna go up this way. I think Dad found a baseball game to watch. He's in there watching the Cubs, I think. I don't think they've been having a very good season. Last night, I think they got beat like 6-0 or something. He wasn't very happy when he went to bed, I know. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that off. So here's our piece then. Okay, so here's our border with the first hooping. So now I'm going to take that fabric. I'm going to take that same piece of stabilizer. I'm going to turn it around and stick it in my hoop here, because then I don't have to waste that side of the fabric or the stabilizer. I go through a lot less stabilizer with this hoop. That's why I like to use this. If things will fit in here, you know, it's not, like I said, it's not very wide. So sometimes things don't fit in here very well. So there we go. Make sure I got it snug. Okay. And then scissors in here. And then we got the same design. We're going to use the same design again. This back in, and the first step, whoops, is Jan needs to rethread her needle because I unthreaded my needle. And then we're going to do our batting placement line. So you just kind of, you sew and repeat, and you sew and repeat. So it makes it really, once you get going, it's really easy. Once you kind of get the hang of it, and once I got going with the glue, it really helped me, because then I didn't have so much trouble with things slipping and sliding on me, because I was really struggling when I first did these. And I think it was on a quilt that I did the first ones, maybe on Love Notes I did this for the first time. That's about the time they started doing this. And I struggled a little bit with the borders because they wanted to slide a little bit on me because I was using the tape. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just slide this in here. And step number 2 is going to be the batting tack down line. Oops. I'm going to sew that in too. And there we go. Okay, so does everybody want me to do one more hooping, or do you think you're good after this one. You understand the procedure after we've done it a couple of times, or would you like me to do it one more time? So you let me know. Because I'm going to finish mine tonight, because I've got only a couple more hoopings to do, so I'll finish it anyway. Because then I'll have all my borders done. You're good? Okay. Jackie's good? Okay. Yep, so I'll just do it 2 more times, and then like this one, let's see. Oh yeah, this one here, I'm show you while this is stitching. This is the last hooping, and you can see it's fairly short. It was like, this is the full piece of fabric, so it was pretty short at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to trim this. And I'll show you one more time how to get it in there for getting the seam all lined up. So it's not hard. Once you get going on them, they're pretty easy. And it's the same procedure over and over. So you just keep going until you run out of border or flange. You can do big long ones. Like I said, I usually, when I do the borders like on the quilts and stuff, I just cut the widths of fabrics and I just keep going until I'm done. I just keep going until it's done. And then I trim them to the length that I want for the quilt. All right, so there's that. Oops, okay, there we go. Then we're going to do step number 3 is going to be the placement line for the fabric. So I don't have any stabilizer caught anywhere. And then I got to, whoops, I wonder what happened to my glue stick. Oh, here it is. I spend most of my life looking for my scissors and my glue sticks. The scissors are always on the floor, it seems like. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing. I've got the tail, the tail flip back. Oh, centered the wording on the strip? It was centered on the strip pretty much. You mean the letters of the red one? It is pretty much centered. Jan, was that you? Okay. So then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use, second here. We're going to take our glue stick up here at the top. And I'm going to trim just a little bit. I always like to make sure that I'm pretty close to the stitches up here so that the batting lines line up nicely together. And I was a little bit off on this one, so there we go. So I'm going to take my glue stick along the top there. I'm going to flip the tail back. Oh, you mean lengthwise? One of the borders is pretty much even, but see the other border is longer. So the shorter one is pretty much even, but the other one is not. Okay, so I've got these, and you want to make it as close as you can and keep it nice and flat. Okay, and then I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to go all the way down and all the way down the sides between the line and the stitching line. Okay, and then just make it even and stick it down to the hoop. Yeah, I was just really struggling with these, and then I thought, well, why aren't you using tape, or why are you using tape, Jan? You could use you could use the glue stick, because I use glue stick for everything. It was like, it took me a couple borders to figure out, oh, well, maybe I should just use the glue stick. Okay. There we go. So I can get this turned around again. And you have to be a little careful when you're sliding it in. And then down here, don't get your tail stuck in the glue. The glue makes that, so it does. I like I said, I did my first one. I was reading the instructions. You know, I always read the instructions, and then usually in the middle of something, I get an aha moment. You know. Okay, so then of course step number 3, or step number 4. This is step number 4. This is step number 4. Is going to be the tack down for the fabric. Hold it in place for us. And then just make sure you don't get your tail stuck in your stitching. There we go. Okay. So I'll probably finish mine tonight. I'd like to get it done, so it's done. Ready for next week, then we can put them together. Okay, so there's my tack down. Okay, and then the next step is going to be the quilting. There we go. So my other one's all done, and I'll finish this one up tonight. Okay. So let's go. Whoops! I shut the tie for my pant leg in my drawer, so I was like stuck to the drawer over here. Okay, so it's a going. So let's talk a little bit while this is finishing up. All right, so next week, I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera back up here too, okay, while this is stitching. Just a second. Looks like my mouse has disappeared. There it is. So next week, we will put this together. And there's really no embellishments on this one. So we'll put this together and we'll talk about, you know, getting all the blocks on. And if you do it in advance, remember, if you did cut your flanges and your borders, take a full 1/4 inch seam when you're putting this together, because then you're much more likely to have your borders and your flanges fit fine. Okay. So, and then I've got a couple little tricks about putting it together on the back and stitching it together. And but there's not any embellishments on this one really, so we don't have to do a bunch of extra things at the end. We just have to sew it together and put the flanges and borders on. So that's what we're going to do next week. Okay, and then Sunday night on Sew Along with Jan, Sunday we're going to do we're going to talk about the rotary blade for the scan and cut. But then we're also going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to make the flowers for the July bench buddies, because you have to make flowers, and I didn't want to have to trim them with scissors. So I figured out a way that we could use our scan and cut to do that, because a lot of people have those. So that's what we're going to do on Sunday. Did you install a zipper? Did you install, in the back? No, I like the envelope backs. So no, I didn't put a zipper in. You can if you want to. I just like envelope backs because they're really fast and easy. But that would be a good idea. You could put a zipper in it. I don't like to put zippers in very well. So, okay. So next week then, on Monday night, we'll finish up Sweet Land of Liberty. Sunday night, we'll do scan and cut and the new rotary blade and make some flowers. It's really fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the Sunday night one too. The rotary blade is really cool. It does take a little while to cut. So I'm going to only cut just a couple things because it takes a little while. It's just because it has to turn a lot. So I won't cut a ton of stuff in class, but we'll talk about it and get some flowers made. But that's how I did the flowers for my little July bench buddies, because they both had flowers on them that were made out of felt. So, okay. So if you have any questions, you can message me through Facebook. You can call me at the store. All the stuff that we use tonight, all the glue sticks and everything and the scissors and all that are all up on shieldsewingcenter.com. And some of you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel. So go to Sew Along with Jan on YouTube and subscribe, because I know there's a few that still haven't subscribed. So if you haven't done that, please do. And if you have any questions, let me know. So we'll see you next week on Sunday and Monday night for Sew Along with Jan. So thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.